Welcome to Television Sydney News. I'm Sandra SIAGIAN. It's great to have you with us. In this week's bulletin, a $300 million development in Sydney South recommended for approval, hospitals struggle to cope with an increase in emergency department numbers, and the hills come alive with talent. But first, New South Wales opposition leader John Robertson promised to scrap new laws allowing shooting in national parks during a protest bushwalk in the Blue Mountains. About 150 people attended Saturday's rally at Blue Mountains National Park in Glenbrook, where locals wore high visibility clothing and waved signs. Mr Robertson says Labor will overturn the legislation if elected to Parliament because it put lives at risk.
We are going to see amateurs running around, shooting up flora and fauna right across our state. We're going to see families put at risk.
While the new laws won't affect the Blue Mountains World Heritage Area, former Mayor Adam Searle says locals are very concerned about the future.
This decision by the federal government to permit hunting and shooting in the national parks is truly devastating. It sent shockwaves through the local community. People are very fearful about what it might mean in terms of public safety, but also the safety of the native flora and fauna in these high-value conservation areas.
The new laws passed through Parliament last month and allow shooting in 79 of the state's national parks and reserves.
I'm also part of a family that loves walking in national parks, and many amongst you here also love that, and I am worried about my safety and the safety of my children.
A $300 million proposal to upgrade the Cronulla Sharks Club has been recommended for approval. The Department of Planning and Infrastructure has forwarded its recommendation to the state government's independent planning body for final determination. But Sutherland Shire Mayor Carol Provan is disappointed by the recommendation, saying she thinks the development will be a disaster. The plan proposes an upgrade of club facilities along with construction of 8 apartment blocks containing 700 units. St George and Sutherland hospitals are struggling to cope with record numbers of people turning up at their emergency departments. More than 13,000 people were seen in the 6 weeks to June 16, and the situation is expected to worsen in coming weeks. The St George Hospital Emergency Department's Acting Director, Peter Grant, blames the flu season, an ageing population and a sporadic peak in the number of diarrhoea-type illnesses. Extra doctors are being recruited to help cover the busiest periods. Chifley MP Ed Husick has teamed up with Mount Druitt MP Richard Amery in a bid to obtain an MRI scanning machine for Blacktown Mount Druitt Hospital. The federal government has recently indicated its intention to grant several MRI licences. Mr Husick says improved diagnostic services are needed at Mount Druitt Hospital and, if provided, will reduce travel times for residents in an area with the lowest proportion of people holding a driver's licence in Sydney. A former child soldier conscripted into the Sudanese army at just 8 years old has written a book about his experiences. Marjuk Tolba, who now lives in Kingswood, was saved after being judged too weak to hold a gun and spent several years in a Sudanese refugee camp before coming to Australia at 16. His newly published book, Beneath Darkening Skies, tells of his life as a child soldier and refugee. Mr Tolba hopes the book will raise awareness about the plight of child soldiers. A bonsai collector's favourite tree has been returned to her a month after it was stolen from her garden in Smithfield. 36-year-old Tamar OHANESSIAN has been practising the Eastern art of tree miniaturisation for the past 14 years. But thieves broke into her Paulding Street garden on June 1 and stole 12 trees worth nearly $1,000, including a Port Jackson fig with sentimental value.
What makes this plant so special was that it came from a cutting from my grandmother's tree. And I managed to cut it and grow it before she passed away. So it's really, really sentimental to me that it's something that was part of what was hers and now is part of what's mine.
In a desperate bid to get her trees back, her story was published in the Fairfield Champion on June 13, and on Sunday, the Port Jackson fig was returned.
By running the article in the Fairfield Champion, it definitely got the word out there, and it let people know that, hey, I've lost something, and you know, the word was out, and the person who maybe took my plant read the article and had found some kindness in their heart to bring it back.
OHANESSIAN says she felt ecstatic upon finding her tree on the driveway.
I was at the mailbox and got all the letters and walking down the driveway, and one of the letters fell, and as it fell it drew my eye to where the tree was, and when I saw it, I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, you know, like this, literally, and I was just like, oh my God, you know, and I screamed, and I literally fell to my knees, and I picked up my plant and I hugged it and I just absolutely bawled my eyes out. I cried like I'd never cried before, and I was just like, my tree is back.
Liverpool councillor Ned Manoon says he no longer has any official involvement with a company being investigated for operating in premises without legal consent. Mr Manoon was listed as the Chief Executive of Skills Training Australia on a government website until 2 weeks ago. The not-for-profit educational establishment moved to Copeland Street in Liverpool in late January. Some internal building modifications took place, resulting in a yet-to-be-resolved dispute with the council about whether formal approvals ought to have been sought and obtained first. A draft report that found climate change the main reason for water loss at Thirlmere Lakes has been challenged. Professor Philip Pells has produced an independent report that found longwell mining partially responsible for the lakes drying out. The report is in contrast to the results of the inquiry, which found mining had changed the water table, but was not to blame for the water loss. Professor Pells says the government's inquiry relied on information from studies commissioned by ex-Strata Coal, and as such, its findings were not truly independent. Western Sydney's struggling retailers are not impressed with a campaign promoted by Sydney Lord Mayor Clover Moore, urging shoppers to buy less. The Buy Nothing New campaign encourages shoppers to purchase only necessities during the month of October. But the Australian Retailers Association said current trading conditions were the most depressed in years, and the Cumberland Business Chamber has vowed not to support it. Paintbrushes and crayons rather than drugs are being used to treat mental illnesses at the Hills Clinic in Kellyville. As the first purpose-built private mental health hospital in the state, the clinic has embraced programs like art and horticulture therapy. Intern psychologist Natalie Mortimer says the art room is a safe zone where patients can work through potentially painful subjects.
Art therapy is about allowing patients to express their inner thoughts and feelings through a creative process. It's not necessarily about how creative or artistic they can be, it's more about the journey.
Patients work together on projects, including a mural of the clinic's gardens.
The Tree of Life is one of my favourites. It comes from narrative therapy perspective, and it's about creating a tree of life. So first of all, I get the patients to draw a tree, to create it however they want. That's the only instruction I give them. So they sort of have a really creative, open space to create whatever they like. And then after that, I get them to write in different parts of the tree. The roots stand for where they were coming before the hospital, so what they were doing. The trunk is about their hopes and dreams. The branches is about their skills and abilities. The fruit of the tree is about the gifts that they give others. The leaves are about the people in their life that support them. And the flowers are what they give to other people. So it's a way for patients to, I suppose, express what makes up their life at the moment. And then we give the metaphor of what happens when your tree comes across a storm, so something like mental health problems or situations in your life that you can't help, and what happens to that tree. So we get the group to process information about that and what happens to their trees.
The clinic has treated more than 1,000 patients since it opened a year ago. Parramatta's Winter Festival of Light has brought some much-needed warmth to the city centre. Winterlight is a 16-day event in Church Street Mall featuring an ice skating rink, lighting and scenery installations and outdoor movies. More than 100,000 people are expected to experience the event, which ends on July 15. The annual league clash between Rosehill and Hall Road Police was held at St Mary's on the eve of Wednesday's State of Origin decider. Now in its third year, the game raises money for Police Legacy, a charity supporting widows and families of deceased officers. Hall Road Police Acting Superintendent Bradfield Peters says fundraisers like the match are important to the policing community.
The idea of these matches is to support and raise money for Police Legacy. Legacy is a charity organisation which has been running now for about 25 years. It's a charity which receives no other funding other than the money that they raise themselves, and at the moment Police Legacy are currently supporting over 200 widows and families. Rosehill
came into the match confident of making up for Hall Road's 2 previous wins, but once again left defeated after being on the wrong end of a 34-4 scoreline. Hall Road captain Constable Michael Carter was delighted with the win.
3 in a row, we're undefeated. We played Rosehill for the last 3 years now and we've won every single game against them. Every year it gets tougher, but we keep coming back.
And in sport, karate, taekwondo and sumo wrestling will be on display at the Sydney Martial Arts and Cultural Festival later this month. Blacktown's Jason Mareko, who weighs in at 202 kilograms, will be on hand to show sumo wrestling in action at the Castle Hill Showground event. The 29-year-old, who works as a security guard, says he hopes the festival will increase awareness of the sport and encourage people to become members of the Australian Sumo Federation. The federation already has 50 members, and Mareko encouraged everyone to check out the sport for themselves.
Wrestling in Australia, it's an interesting sport because it's open to anyone. There are weight divisions, so anyone can compete according to how heavy they are. You can learn about the culture, the Japanese culture, as well as putting whatever martial arts background you have. If you're a strong person, learn your grappling skills and take it from there.
He said diet was very important as sumo wrestlers needed to weigh as much as possible.
Some of the dietary requirements, being heavy is an advantage because it makes you harder to move. So we look at traditional foods that are high in protein, so your meats, your vegetables. We have a traditional stew called chanko, which is a combination of the two.
Mareko will compete in the 115 kilogram plus opens category at the upcoming Australian National Sumo Championships on the Gold Coast. Sutherland Shire middle distance running champion Eloise Welling sees the irony in competing against African runners at the London Olympics. Eloise has been helping African women, men and their children to change their lives for years, and some of her Olympic rivals have been affected by poverty, war and other hardships. After London, Eloise will lead her Love Mercy Foundation team of 20 Australians to Uganda for the opening of a medical clinic. After a pre-season disrupted by rain, the fortunes of the Holroyd Parramatta Goannas AFL team have turned, with the team now aiming for a finals berth. The team was promoted to the AFL Sydney Division 1 competition this year, but lost their first 4 games. The Goannas have since recorded 6 wins from their last 6 games and are in 3rd place on the ladder. Camden RSL women bowlers have surpassed all expectations to reach this year's state pennant playoffs. Their combined age totals almost 600, with the majority aged in their 70s and the oldest member aged 80. But the 8-strong number 4 pennant team will compete in the championships at Tuncurry on August 13. The bowlers know winning the pennant will be tough, but they are planning to be playing at their best on the day. And finally, budding performers will battle it out at the Hills Are Alive talent competition at the Mean Fiddler over the next 2 months. The weekly competition will be held at the Rouse Hill venue on Thursday nights for the next 6 weeks. Brianna Holm couldn't help but laugh when a song she wrote about being rejected for a part was the only one chosen for an encore. Brianna, who performed her own composition, Catching Fire, was one of 4 selected to progress to the final.
Catching Fire was basically about being rejected for a part that I really wanted, the lady said a couple of mean words to me, so I basically wrote the song to say I'll just get back up there and keep fighting for what I believe.
Other artists from round 2 through to the final are singers Cartha Raju of Penrith, Holly Withington of Rouse Hill and Daniel Aceta of Campbelltown. And that's all the news we have time for. For more information on any of these stories, pick up your local Fairfax community newspaper. I'm Sandra SIAGIAN and we'll see you next time.